Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on part 3 of our dive into Heaven Official's Blessing. And yeah, so the audio drama is still on hiatus. I've got a couple comments I want to go into before we start this, but I was like, oh buddy, it's on hiatus still, so I don't know when it's coming back. But you know what? We're going to keep going. So we're going to keep trucking through this novel because I'm hooked. I want to know. So we're going to be looking at, for this episode, chapters in the web serialization 12 through 16, and in the English translation it is chapters 5 and 6. And so it should be like pages 143 in this to like 200. So it's a nice 67 page chunk, or 57 page chunk that we're getting into. But I chose those chapters specifically because I know at this point it's going to be right when we meet San Long or right before it. And it's also going to be our big exposition dump for all of the things about Hua Cheng. And I was like, okay, if we're going to spend like 60 pages talking about Hua Cheng and his backstory, we need to just focus on that. So, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to look at the Manhua, starting with chapters 13. And we're going to look at chapters 12 through 16 in the novel. And I've got Reiki, thank you, Reiki. The last one that I looked at, there was an error where it didn't show in the digital version that I have, it didn't show some of Xie Lian's thoughts. And so Reiki sent me a thing on the Discord and was like, here's like the updated version. It won't have that issue. And so I was like, thank you. But looking at this now, it's like page 100 is where we're starting of 1,997. I was like, oh shit, we're only like 10, we're not even 10% into this story. We're like a percent, we're like a percent in. I was like, oh my God, no. I was like, oh, 2,000 pages and we're on page 100. Okay. That's not counting like the extra chapters or anything. I was like, oh. So yeah, we're probably going to start the second volume before the Donghua season 2 comes out. But you know what? That's fine. That's fine. It'll just be like the Untamed. I'll enjoy it when it comes out. We'll fangirl and see it all animated. It'll be glorious. Be worth it. So, and same thing with the audio drama. When the audio drama comes out, depending on how far we get into this story before the audio drama reappears, I may just do like chunks of the audio drama as we go and just post them randomly as they come out through YouTube and Patreon. So just as extra things. So if you want to listen to me react to the audio drama, they'll be there. But we're going to do the manhwa and the novel until there's no more manhwa to catch up with, and then we're going to do the novel. So we're just going to power through and then go with it and do what we can. So we'll cross each bridge as we go through. But I'm really excited to dive into chapters 12 through 16. The last set was really, really good. Some nice additions, some horror-esque elements from MXTX. I'm like, all right, girl, you got me into this. We're getting more into Xie Lian, his mindset. I'm like, we're about to start the Manhua arc. I love it. I'm ready to hear more about the inside of Xie Lian's thoughts, his inner monologue, because we don't get a lot of that in the Donghua. Should be a good time. But I do have a couple comments before we begin. Qian Fong talked about how the Lord of Soil and Ground, that was in part 1, Tu Gong, is a tutelary deity of Chinese folklore and Taoism, god of grassroot, protects. I thought this part was interesting because their comment talked about how that Tu Gong protects peace and tranquility of the village, but is also like an administrative god of the underworld. And I was like, that's kind of cool, because you think of the way that ghosts are portrayed in this world, you don't think of them having anything to do with peace and tranquility. You think of them being like destructive and menacing. But this one Lord of Soil and Ground is kind of encompassing both the underworld, but also peace and tranquility. So it's like they can go hand in hand, apparently. Not according to the heavenly realm, but that's interesting. And I was like, I wonder, and Xie Lian seems so eager to get help from Tu Gong, that I wonder if maybe that's kind of like a commentary of Xie Lian's thoughts about everything. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting, so I'm glad you pointed that out, Qian Fong. Thank you. SQQLBH 314 talked about how there's a translation, and Anime Annie said this as well, but that when Lin Wing is talking about Pei Ming, and said there's a translation censorship where it says Pei Ming and his girls, meaning that he was all about the threesomes, was not going to shy away from a threesome. I'm like, oh. And so Anime Annie was kind of like, yeah, Ling Wing kind of just calls him a man whore. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, there's that. I feel like these characters like Pei Ming and Mu Xing, they're going to be characters that I'm going to really enjoy seeing fleshed out when we get more of them. That's going to be really exciting. So I'm just going to like sit on my hands until we get to that point. But I'm excited for this coming chapter because we're going to go back to the Heavenly Realm and have the conversation and hopefully get more insight there. So fun times. But also, SQLBH314 also said, they point out this, I hadn't really thought about it in the last part, but yeah, Xie Lian's had that collar on, that curse shackle, since he was descended the first time, meaning it's been there all along, meaning that when he fought the Emperor for 30 minutes in the Heavenly Realm, he was strong enough to fight him for 30 minutes with the curse shackle on and no spiritual powers. What? I was like, oh, so Xie Lian is really, really strong. Which would make sense because when he first ascended, his parents made all those shrines. He had 8,000 temples. He had all these worshippers. And then things went to hell in a handbasket. But it would make sense he was really, really strong from the get-go. And then him being worshipped and gaining all those merits just made him even more powerful. And now he's just kind of... Which also makes me think that that's why maybe Hua Cheng is very upset with the Heavenly Realm, because he's like, you shackled my man and now he can't be his full strength. I don't like that. Like, I just get those vibes too, because San Long / Hua Cheng just seems like somebody that would not want you messing with his dude. So, and then finally, Kix K talked about how the manhwa was seemingly made for novel readers. And I really agree with that. I was doing the audio drama, novel, and then manhwa. And now I'm doing the novel and the manhwa, and I can really tell that the manhwa kind of skips over certain parts of the story because it expects you to already know from reading the novel, and it gives you the fan service artwork that you want to see, but it doesn't give you all the details that the actual story does, which is kind of in contrast with Modao Zushi, because with Modao Zushi, the manhwa is pretty faithful to the text as much as it can be with censorship. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, they also commented saying that maybe season 2 production of the Donghua was pushed back to put some content that was added by MXTX in there. I don't know. I don't know when season 2 is going to come out, but that would be interesting. And sadly, Kix K said that the audio drama episode 1 has been taken off their app. So I'm like, what? Why? I was like, the first episode was really good. So maybe it'll come back. I mean, I've spent worse $10, so I'm not horribly sad, but I'm not sad about losing that $10, but I'm still like, I want the audio drama, dang it. It was good. So we'll see. We'll see. But in any case, I'm really excited to get more into this book and read it with you all. And so we'll do like last time, where I will read it, do my live reaction to the reading. I'll take notes if I see any that need to be taken note of, and then we'll talk about the manhwa and it as well. I don't have an extra to look at for this one, but there is an extra on the audio drama that's like a season extra. It's like a making of. I think I might save that for when I do the season 2 trailer for the Donghua. I may save it and do it with that, just kind of, or do it at the very end of volume 1, or do it in the next video. I don't know. I haven't decided. It's like 25 minutes long, so I was like, I don't know. The way I've planned it out, there is a section, I think maybe we'll get to the 5th part. There's a section that I could probably squeeze it in. So we'll see. We'll see if any more of the audio drama comes out between now and then, and I might fit it in there, but I'll figure out what to do. But let's go through this novel, shall we? We just ended with Xie Lian facing the boy with the bandages, and his blood is drained from his face because he saw what this boy's face looked like. So let's see what this is like, huh? Let's just go ahead and check it out, huh? So we're gonna start part 3 of our examination into chapters 12 through 16 of Heaven Official's Blessing here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 12, The Red-Clad Ghost, Burning of the Martial and Civil Temples. Oh, wait, what? Beneath the bloody scars, there are traces of 3 to 4 tiny faces. What? Oh! Oh, they're squeezing and squirming on a face? Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. No, the face disease. Oh, it's literally a face disease. Nope. Squirming faces on a face. You know, you've you've tackled my ninth circle of hell. If there's one thing I'm terrified, it's of being like having a bug or something inside of me and being a host to it. That sounds like that, and that's a big pile of nope. And turn off. We don't need to go any further. Ah. Oh, yeah. And it's like it's not that he couldn't accept the face, it's the fact that this has clearly brought back a horrifying memory to him. No, no, no. He was too tired to care. So yeah, so Xie Lian saying that he didn't think Muxing would come even if he had the time, but he was too tired to care. Oh, our boy. Like, this has been a traumatic experience. He's like, Nanfang and Fu Yao are just bickering back and forth, and he's like, I'm done. This has been I've tried to repress. And we don't even know about him repressing his memories yet. So this whole aspect of it, we don't know as the audience yet. So yeah, he's just like, I didn't need to bring this back up today. So they weren't with him when, in the novel, they weren't with him when he asked him to undo the bandages. It was just Xie Lian and the boy. Okay, I think I forgot that from the last one. Nanfang and Fu Yao were not there. It's not a matter of ugliness. He has the human face disease. Yes. Okay, so we're getting backstory. Okay, let's get this human face disease. What is this? A plague 800 years ago, so around the time of the first ascension. Okay. It was a plague. Went through Shanli and wiped out the nation. Oh, they could speak and scream. I like Fu Yao's expression went through a myriad of changes. It was extinguished hundreds of years ago. There's no way it can reappear. No one could refute this if it came from Xie Lian. He would be the only one that would know, right, of them? Oh, and the burn scars to self-induced burning to get rid of the faces. Oh. The first reaction of those who contracted the disease was to slice off the faces and burn them off with fire. Oh. So yeah, is he contagious? His condition should be cured, only the scars remain. So interesting. Getting some mystery with our bandage boy. Oh, he brought Ying's body in the tea shop and didn't even realize it. Oh no. This case was finally over, but Xie Lian thought the last few days since he had ascended felt longer than an entire year of him collecting junk in the mortal realm. Oh. Maybe he'd roam the world telling how stories of collecting junk were better than Ascension. Oh, man. Oh, and he's still in the wedding dress. Yep. Yeah, you were talking to Paige Jr. the whole time, but it's fine. He's seen you in worse. The path to heroics and therefore ascension is bloody. So they got to the part where they talk about Pei Jr. Slaughtering a city. Okay. Yeah, slaughtering the city, it's much more laid out in the novel than the Donghua. The translation's just weird in the Donghua. Yeah, and in the Heavenly Court, there aren't many who are trustworthy or worth meeting. I'm like, ha! Fun times! Man, Fu Yao, you think you and Hua Cheng won't get along? I don't know, you guys seem to have similar views. Maybe you guys are just, you know, Fu Yao's too tsundere to admit it. And then Xie Lian's like, he probably got bullied. Oh, interesting. So we have Fu Yao. Fu Yao does not trust the Heavenly Court, but Nanfang is convinced there are trusting people. Interesting. All right, we're about to get into this. Yeah, Xie Lian has 8 questions he wants answers to. Okay, so he's met with Ling Wen. Oh, I like that he finds this little good place to like meditate and go into the communication array. I like that the first thing that Feng Xin says is "holy fuck." like what? I like that's the first thing, like, because Feng Xin's with Nanfeng, and Nanfeng's like, there's trustworthy, kind people in the heavenly court, and then and it is the god that he works with. That's the first thing out of his mouth. I'm like, man, Feng Xin cursing right off the bat. And Feng Xin had never been good with women. Okay, and he has to interrogate. Okay, interesting. I like that Xie Lian's like, okay, I haven't ascended in 800 years. I'm not. It's like the guy, it's like, you know, when you go to a high school reunion and there's like clearly a clique of friends that have all kept together after high school and they talk to each other like on a daily basis, and you're that one friend that like hasn't seen them in 10 years and you just like come in, you're like, how's it going? Like, I feel like that's Xie Lian. He's like, I know I should be quiet, but I really want to know about what you guys are talking about, so I'm going to ask now. I was like, oh, man. Ah, interesting. So what Feng Xin is saying is that, oh, it's not Pei Ming's fault that she's like this. No, it's Qi Rong that's the one at fault. Ah, interesting. Because he's like, well, she only became powerful the last 100 years ago when Qi Rong took a liking to her and took her under her wing. Only then did her spiritual powers improve. So, yeah, all the blame should go to Qi Rong since he was the one that gave her under the command. Interesting. Interesting. It says, all the blame should go to the green ghost Qi Rong instead, since he was the one who took her under his command and gave her the power to harm humans. Everyone was already of the opinion that this sin was all General Pei's to bear, but no one said it out loud. Yet he noticed and spoke of it so openly in a reminder that it shut everyone up and made them hide their real thoughts deep within. Ah, fascinating. I love that it falls completely silent. And Xie Lian's like, and I love that Ling Wen's like, what did you just say? And Mu Qing said coldly, he just said he met Hua Cheng. Ooh, Mu Qing is the one to bring it up. Okay. Ah. And I like that upon learning the name of the young man in red, Xie Lian felt his spirits lift inexplicitly and he smiles. So he's called Hua Cheng. What a fitting name for him. I love they're all speechless. Have you ever heard of the 4 calamities? Yes, let's get into this. Much ashamed, I only know of the 4 famous tales. Ooh, the 4 famous tales. Extravagant stories of the deeds of the 4 gods prior to their ascension. Oh, wait. Oh, wait, what? The 4 tales of 4 gods prior to their ascension. Okay, so let's get into this. 4 tales. Okay. All right, so the young lord who poured wine, the prince who pleased God, the general who snapped his sword, and the princess who slit her throat. The prince who pleased God was the martial might of the crown prince of Shanli. Okay, oh! Being ranked as the 4 famous tales didn't indicate they were the strongest, but their tales were the most known and most talked about. Okay. Oh, and so the 4 calamities came later. That's curious. We have 4 calamities and 4 gods. Oh, Mu Qing is like, what have you been doing this whole time? And Xie Lian's like, eating, sleeping, busking, collecting junk. Duh. I was like, he's like, what do you think? He's like, it's not easy being mortal. There's plenty of things to busy myself with, and they're all complicated. It's not easier than being a heavenly official. Aww. Aww. Okay, so the 4 calamities are the ship sinking Blackwater. Remember that one. And then the night touring, the night touring Green Lantern. I imagine that's Qi Rong, because Qi Rong just seems like, they talk about he's disgusting, and I'm like, that seems like him. The white cloth calamity. That seems like it's the scariest. And the crimson rain sought flower. Okay. The 4 ghost kings of the ghost realm, causing endless headaches to all in the heavenly realm. Humans become gods when they ascend and ghosts when they fall. Ah! Oh, this is interesting. So I like that they're talking about putting the heavenly realm on a pedestal to watch and rule over the mortal realm, but the ghost realm and the mortal realm are together, that they're not separated. They share one earth. Ah, and some pretend to be humans as they walk around and roam in mortal the realm in disguise. Okay. Interesting. That's a little bit different than what I thought. I have a feeling that I'm going to bring Whiteboard Coon out and come back to these pages to break everything down. I feel like I'm going to have to do that because there's just too much. And he's the only one of the 4 not yet a supreme. So he's not devastation. Oh, okay, okay. So the White Cloth Calamity should be someone your highness is familiar with. He's known as the White No-Face. Oh. Oh. They say when a supreme was born, it could destroy an entire nation and throw the world into chaos. Oh, so is the white face connected to the human face disease? Because it's no face? But it's already defeated. Interesting. Okay. I love that they describe Hua Cheng as like the most powerful, worst person, and he nearly ate Xie Lian's soup. So I think it's interesting they talk about that they don't document the ghosts. So like the gods, they know what they were like when they were mortal and all their deeds and everything, but the ghosts, they have no clue. So you really have no clue what they were like when they were alive. Convenient! MXTX for a mystery! Convenient! Ooh, so I'm like, the name Hua Cheng was very obviously fake, and his appearance is most likely fake too. In the rumors, he was sometimes a twisted boy given to capricious mood changes, sometimes a gentle and elegant, handsome young man. Okay. And sometimes a gorgeous seductress with a vicious, deceptive heart. Anything goes! As for his true self, the only thing that could be sure of was that he was dressed in red and appeared during a bloodbath with silver butterflies questing beneath his sleeves. A seductress? We're going to have Hua Cheng become a lady? All right, I'm up for it. Let's do this. I'm here for this. So we got, okay, I'm going to put down Twisted Boy, the gentle and handsome young man, and the seductress. And they don't have a clear backstory for him. Oh, okay. So it says here that they don't really know the story of how he came to be, but I'm going to put down this page number 2 because we're going to go back to this. For Hua Cheng backstory. Okay. But saying that he could be this boy or a soldier or all of the above, who was tormented by the death of his love. In the most outrageous version, only supposedly, he ascended and became a god, but immediately jumped back down on his own and became a ghost. But this was merely a version that wasn't widespread. Yeah, that's seeming okay. Ooh, we're getting some tea spilled. I have so much to talk about when we can discuss this, but we're getting some tea spilled. He did something notorious when he first appeared. He challenged the 35 heavenly officials. A scimitar, okay. Of Mount Tonglu, it was a volcano. Okay, the city of Gu wasn't a place where cultivated poison, but rather the city itself was a great venom. Ooh. Every 100 years, tens of thousands of ghosts descended upon the city of Gu to butcher one another until one remained. What? And they were ghost kings. Only 2 ghost kings have ever made out of the city of Gu. They both became calamities. Oh, okay. Hua Cheng was a ghost king, was such a ghost king. So they don't tell us who the other one was. Well, it's not Qirong, because Qirong's not a supreme yet. I don't think it's the Blackwater. I don't think it's the Blackwater. It seems like it would want you to think it's the Blackwater, but I think it's the No Face. The No Face is the one that climbed out that was also the one. So two Ghost Kings from the city of Gu. Hua Cheng. I don't know. They just, the way that Ling Wen describes the White Calamity, I'm like, that has like final boss vibes. They're like, oh, he's probably been defeated. Probably not connected to anything. Totally fine. Probably not a threat. I'm like, no, that seems like the final boss that we're going to face is going to be the White No Face. I don't know. I don't think it's the Blackwater, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. He was truly, and so after fighting the martial gods and beating them, he's fighting the civil gods, and he can debate them really well. He was sometimes polite, sometimes vicious, sometimes stubborn, sometimes incisive, sometimes quibbling. He was truly a great speaker of sophistication and bullshit. I'm like, oh yes, I love it. I love Hua Cheng already. Verbally abused the civil gods from top to bottom, past to present, and infuriated them so much the waterfall of blood they coughed out washed the skies red. Oh my god. Oh, so he offered up his ashes if he lost. Oh, and if the gods lost, they'd return to being mortals. Huh. Oh. But no one honored the terms. Oh. If only one of them was defeated, it'd be an embarrassment. If all of them were defeated and humiliated, then no one would lose face. Oh, they pretend that nothing had happened. And they would forget it. Oh. Okay. He burned like tens of thousands of temples in a single night. No one knew, but he did it. He was truly insane. Oh. Huh. So they asked the mortals to go and defeat. They broadcast the challenge in the dreams of many royals and nobles to display their strength and might before their most devout believers. So like going into their dreams and trying to tell them to do things? That seems a little shady. But all the royalties and nobles saw was their miserable defeat. And when the mortals woke up, they swapped from worshiping the heaven officials to the Ghost King. Oh, wow. Until they were erased from existence. Wow. Okay. Holy cow. And thus the heavens feared, hated, and respected this Ghost King. Among the 35 gods who were challenged, the two that declined were Shanjin, Mu Qing, and Nanyang, Feng Shin. Of course they were the two that declined. Yeah. Okay. They thought the challenge was beneath them and didn't care for it, and it was the right decision to make. But Hua Cheng hadn't forgot them. Oh. Interesting. And so then it ends with, hearing this, Xie Lian thought of those fluttering silver butterflies that danced around him playfully. He couldn't picture them as described in the rumors. Are they really that scary, Xie Lian wondered? Aren't they rather precious? We just had this whole chapter where the entire heavenly realm is quaking in its boots because this guy has like utterly done these despicable, insane things. And Xie Lian's like, but the precious butterflies, they are meant for one another. I love that Xie Lian's like, yeah, that's rough, but those butterflies are great. Oh my god, this is only chapter 13. Oh, shoot. Yeah, what can he say? That he held his hand and strolled through the woods with him? Oh, so because of his daughter's death, the mayor didn't immediately get the merits back to Xie Lian, but he got them eventually. Oh, I like this. Xie Lian decided he'd now focus on being a good god and thought it'd be great if he could make acquaintances or friends with the other heavenly officials. Oh, that's precious. Oh. Oh, he's trying to make friends and nobody wants to be his friend. He like tries to interject in the conversation. They all just leave him. That's so sad. He wasn't even that old. Why was he the old man amongst the heavenly officials? Oh, he's like Steve Buscemi with the skateboard. He's like, hello, my fellow youth. He's just trying to be their friend. Oh. And he's like, I'll just build my own temple. And they're like, it's truly tragedy at this point. But no matter. I like the one girl was like, oh, can we have General Yu Yang? And then he's thought that Fang Xin would probably shoot him dead on the spot with an arrow. Interesting. Interesting. So he's like, he went to do what? To eat and do what he did best. I like that Xie Lian talks about how in the fairy tales, gods don't have to eat. But in truth, it's hard to say. And he talks about how some of them require clean internal organs and can't ingest anything mortal, like it would be food poisoning. But Xie Lian didn't have a problem with that. Oh, so with the curse collar on, he was no different than a mortal. Okay. He could eat anything, and through experience, nothing he ate could kill him either. Well, at least he can't be poisoned, so that's good. Oh, look at this. So, okay. So Xie Lian's like, and so we're getting to where San Long's in the ox cart too. And he says, a tight pair of black boots on a pair of long legs that was a sight pleasing to the eyes and reminded Xie Lian of a different pair that walked with him at Mount Yuzhen. Yeah. There were no silver chains, which seemed to be made of animal pelt. Probably some son of some aristocrat coming out to play. Oh, sure. Oh, the Prince of Shanla. Ascended thrice as a martial god, a misfortune god, and a rubbish god. He's like, well, if you think about it, martial god's no different than a rubbish god. All gods are equal. All beings are equal. And then a snicker, is that right? Ah, yeah! Ooh, many believe that as the god of misfortune, any paintings or writings of the Prince of Shanla have the powers of a curse. If placed on the back of a person or on the main entrance of a household, then the cursed person or household will run into all sorts of bad luck. It was hard to tell whether this was the description of a god or a ghost. Ooh! He could not bear to read any more about himself. Oh, interesting. So he's talking about how the Water Tyrant gets the name. And so General Yu Yang and the Sweeping General, which is tied to Fang Xin, right? So they usually have nicknames. Xie Lian was known as the laughing stock of the three realms, the infamous freak, the jinx, the outcast, cough, cough, etc. Oh, okay. If anyone were to call Mu Qing the Sweeping General, he'd fly into a rage. Yeah, okay. So it's not Fang Xin, but Mu Qing. Okay. Because Fu Yao gets mad because he says that he was like the servant of him. Okay. I love how this chapter ends, like describing San Long being so crooked and carefree. And looking 16 or 17 and being handsome. What do you want to know? Ask away. Ah, yeah. Maple red clothes, snow white skin. Oh. Ha! I like that Xie Lian like comes across as this old man throughout the story. Xie Lian's like, oh, hello, youth. Like, he just seems like the old man. And so when he actually sees San Long, who, if he's Hua Cheng, and we know he's Hua Cheng, he's much older than that, he thinks of San Long as being younger. And he's like, do you know where it came from, my friend? And he said, out of respect, he didn't say my little friend. I'm like, oh, knowing what Hua Cheng looks like now. Okay. Depends on his mood. What was he like before death? Definitely not a good person. Ooh. What do you think he looks like? Seeing the youth up close, he thought he was too handsome for words. But his beauty was deadly like a sword, sharp and mesmerizing, and made it hard to look at him head on. Oh, and he had to shield his eyes in defeat. Okay. I like the Xie Lian. He's like, I think that his true form is probably a youth like you. And he's like, well, why would you say that? No reason. You say whatever, and I think whatever, so whatever. Like, a man of words, Xie Lian. He's blind in one eye, this one or this one. Oh, he dug out his eye himself in a moment of madness. Interesting. And his ashes are his weakness. I like Xie Lian's like handing over the ashes. He's like, such passion, what charming tales. I didn't know the ghost realm had such a romantic practice. Oh, I like this that he gives him the bun from his sleeve, and then San Long says, what about you? And he's like, I'm not hungry yet. And San Long's like, then I'm all right too. And he's like, well, then we'll split it in half. So it's like San Long wasn't going to take it because he knew Xie Lian was offering it and he would probably be hungry later. So that's really cute. I like that a lot. Oh, so when the cart rattled, Xie Lian reached to grab San Long, fearing he might fall, but when he had touched his hand, the youth shook off his hand as if it burnt. Ooh. Did the boy dislike him? Interesting. So that's a little bit different than the Donghua. Like him reacting like that. And then we have the festival. Okay. They were newly executed criminals holding a head in their hands. Oh, so it's not a lantern. They bore no heads. Oh, so it's a little bit different than the Donghua. It's a little bit creepier. Yeah. They wobbled as their heads buzzed in those bony arms. Ooh, so the ghosts are executed criminals. Oh. I like that so San Long like crouches behind Xie Lian after he knocks the guy out in the cart. And he's like, are you all right? And he's like, oh, of course not. I'm scared. Like it's the most nonchalant thing. And then he's like, although his voice didn't have a single trace of fright, Xie Lian still comforted him. Don't be scared. You're behind me. Nothing will harm you. Oh, oh. The youth smiled, not saying a word. And the youth was staring at him. But he saw the cursed shackle. He pulled the collar lightly. It's interesting that the ghosts, like the executed ghosts, are all talking about their punishment. Oh my gosh. The executioner was a newbie. It took him 5 or 6 tries before he managed to chop off my head. It made me think he did it on purpose. Your family probably didn't tip him well enough. Next time, don't forget to pay the guy and he'll give you a clean chop. There is no next time. Oh my God. What? That's great. That is great. So we get this thing about the 15th day of the 7th month. So it's July 15th is the Zhongwan festival. Okay, for the ghost realm. Okay. And the underworlds were open and all these ghosts and spirits rushed out to play. Okay. But Xie Lian has bad luck, so of course he runs into them. Oh, okay. So when they reached the fork in the road, Xie Lian saw there were 2 pitch black mountain paths. He had to be extra careful here. So sometimes when people strolled, they discover a road that had never existed before, and such a road should never be taken because if wrongfully walked, they'll enter the ghost realm and never return. Oh, so that's why it was so imperative they picked the right place. See, the Donghua isn't really, they were just like, oh, we need a place to go. It's left or right. You know, it was like Goofy movie. Which one do we pick? But in this case, like if they go on the wrong road, they may never return to the mortal realm. Okay, that makes it a little bit more, the stakes are a little higher there, right? I like and the fortune shaker was one of the things that he got from scrap collecting. The worst of bad luck. Oh my gosh. Oh, my friend, your luck is quite good. And he says, really, I think my luck is pretty good too. It's always been so. Interesting. Okay. Oh, and we don't see. Oh, cool. So yeah. So the Donghua does give a little bit more away about Hua Cheng and San Long being the same, because in the book here, the ghosts are all yelling at Xie Lian, and then suddenly they stop and they're staring at him, but what they don't see is that San Long is behind him. Ah, it was just the boy who was propped up on his cheek. Ooh, that's kind of scary because then even though the Donghua shows us just San Long looking at them, we don't know in the novel if that was really the case. It'll be interesting to see that in the manhwa, if that was really the case, or if he like revealed himself to the ghost and they were like, oh shit, and like peaced out. Mm-hmm. I like that we have an entire paragraph to describe San Long's hand as he's about to do the fortune telling, the session. It was a vulnerable kind of beautiful, but there was a hidden strength beneath the muscles. It was a hand that one wouldn't want to have choking their throat, even though it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Ah. Xie Lian was mindful of not touching San Long due to the slight change in the latter's expression last time they touched. He'd simply looked down to study the hand up close. Interesting. So when he touches him, it's a thing. Okay. I like that he gives him the fortune about your future is bright and full of success. He's like, all of that was complete bullshit made up on the spot. He never learned palmistry. Once upon a time when he was still banished, he often regretted not learning palmistry or face reading at the Royal Holy Pavilion. If he had the skills, then earning pennies in the streets wouldn't have been so hard, and he wouldn't have had to busk or shatter boulders on his chest. Oh my gosh. What he really wanted wasn't the fortune of the youth, but rather whether his hands had fingerprints or palm prints. And then we get into the whole part about the ghost. Yeah. What a romantic. San Long's like, don't fortune tellers talk about love and marriage? He's just trying to bring it up. It's like, oh my gosh. I'm not great at fortune telling, so I don't know how to predict relationships, but I don't imagine you have anything to worry about. Xie Lian, he's like, why do you say that? There must be many girls who crush on you. And why do you suppose so many girls must like me? San Long. Oh, I love it. Oh, and when they get off the cart, that San Long is a head taller than him. Oh, okay. The two couldn't see eye to eye on even ground. That height difference. Yes. Or a cave. He's going to go sleep in a cave. That won't do. Is Xie Lian concerned? Oh, I've got no place to go. Oh. Come to my shrine. Is that okay? Oh, okay, then let's go. All right, chapter 16, Maple Red Cloth, Snow White Skin 4. Xie Lian was stunned right there and then. He watched as the lengthy youth walked away with his giant bag of junk as if it was the most natural thing in the world, and it made him mutter, "Forgive my sins," inwardly. Oh my gosh. With you, Xie Lian, with you. Oh, so he puffs out a laugh at the sign that's asking for donations. And he's like, that's what it is, really. That's why you might not be comfortable here. And he says, it's not too bad. And he says, in the past, it had been Xie Lian who told others, it's all right, not too bad. Aww. So he talks about, he's like, I'll bring some paper. He's like, oh, you're missing a shrine, a picture of the god. And he's like, oh, I'll paint a portrait tomorrow. Painting a portrait of himself to hang in the shrine he built for himself, to pray for himself. If the heavenly court caught wind of this, they'd laugh at him for another 10 years. But he can't afford to commission it. Oh. So he'll be laughed at for 10 years and save money instead. Oh. Oh, and Xie Lian asks what he thinks of him. Ooh. Ooh, okay. So he talks about, so they have the conversation about the Heavenly Emperor, and I'm saying, like, the conversation from the Donghua. He removed his white boots and continued, one needs to be punished for making mistakes. The Heavenly Emperor was simply doing his duty. Perhaps. Xie Lian took off his outer robes and folded them and was ready to place them on the altar table. Wanting to say more, he turned around to see San Long's eyes staring at his ankles. It was hard to describe that gaze. It was icy but searing, scorching without a hint of chill. And he understood on his right ankle was a black cursed shackle. The first curse was around his neck and the second around his ankle. And they were placed in areas not easily concealed. Oh. So he has two of them. Okay, but only on the... It seemed the youth didn't really like the sun. You know, no hints there. The way he was watching the sky as if he wanted to pluck the sun out and smash it to pieces. Let it be known that Xie Lian likes a messy bun. I like these. He's like, are you thinking about doing something else? With his hair down, San Long looked handsome, but there was an added air of wickedness. I like that. So the villagers all show up to pray at the shrine. And he's like, the villagers had not a clue the kind of god worshipped in the shrine, but still all crowded in wishing to light incense and prayer. It didn't matter who it was a god, and prayers do no harm. Xie Lian had initially expected tumbleweeds and crows at the shrine, with only a few coming to offer prayers. Oh my gosh. No, please stop wishing for wealth. The result will be unpredictable. This shrine doesn't bless you with good marriage, and it doesn't grant pregnancies either. I like that the girls are looking at San Long and blushing because he's, you know, so good looking. And they're like, do you grant? And he's like, he didn't know what they were going to ask, but instinctively that must be stopped and says, no! That's such like a grandpa movie. He's like, no, you don't get it. Oh, and says that the shrine visitors were due to San Long's good luck. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, did the seal block him out of the shrine? Ha ha! Okay. Interesting. Did it block him out indeed? Okay. That is the question. Interesting. Well, I want to go and check out the Manhua, and then I have a feeling that I'm going to need to just go ahead and bring out Whiteboard Coon because we're going to have to break this down. I had to bring Whiteboard Coon out. There's no way we couldn't for this. There's too much. I was afraid with this chapter. I was like, okay, when we get into this talk about the calamities, I'm going to probably need to bring Whiteboard Coon out. And then now we have 4 tales. 4 calamities. This series is setting up like an interesting balance between ghosts and gods. And it's not necessarily that they're equals, but that there are parallels. And so I want to bring up in this version, it's pages 107 to 109. That's where we really get all the good garbly-gook. But in this version, I'm going to say that it is, where is it at in this version? They're talking about basically from pages 150 to like 153 down to page 155. Like we get there and we get the whole thing with him. I do want to point out a couple of things as far as what is illustrated in the English version. There's some fun stuff. Lots of fun stuff in this. Starting at page 142, getting in there. The human face disease. What? This whole thing about this face. It makes sense. The human face disease, where it's like little warts, these warts that blow up into faces that can scream and seem like, my biggest phobia is like a parasite inside of me. This sounds like a nightmare. Nope, was not having that. The only other image we really get is this, to counterbalance the horror of the human face disease, we get this beautiful shot of San Long and Xie Lian looking quite handsome there. So that's where we get that. So that's great. But yeah, so around pages like 152 to 157-ish in the English translation. I want to go through this because yeah, the 4 famous tales. So there's this interesting like balance in a weird way where you have a balance between the gods versus the ghosts. And it's interesting because some of them seem to align with one another. And I'm like, okay. And I'm probably going to have some pictures from the Manhua over here because the Manhua like illustrates everything. And I'm like, oh, painting a picture without revealing a lot of faces. Although the White Calamity is the one I'm scared of the most. I don't like the White Calamity. Not, was it by Wuxing? Not having that. That seems like final boss level stuff that we're going to face led down the road. Nah. Whenever Ling Wen was like, oh, it's probably no big deal. Probably don't have to worry about it. I'm like, no, that's not how these stories go. No, you can't just shrug that off. So, interestingly enough, starting about, we have only, Xie Lian thinks to himself he only knows the 4 famous tales. Now, the Manhua does this kind of weird. The Manhua has it to where it is Ling Wen telling him all of this instead of him hearing in the communication array and having a conversation. And like we talked at the beginning of this video, the Manhua seems to like just kind of condense things from the novel and just illustrates what it wants, which if you've read the novel, it's fine. It's just Ling Wen tells him everything that happens instead of him hearing it in a communication. So before we break down this whole 4 calamities, 4 famous tales, I do have a couple of notes here. Like the human face disease, the idea of squirming faces on a face, not having it. Xie Lian and the boy, I forgot that Nanfang and Fu Yao were not there when Xie Lian was with him. I forgot that was the thing. I feel like in the Donghua they were together and they saw it and then he ran away. But I feel like in the novel, they're like, no, it was just Xie Lian and him. So we find out, and I'm going to put, and of course Huckleberry's at my feet, so I can't move my chair. But so the human face disease, or FHD, as we shall call it, was from 800 years ago. It was from Xie Lian. And it basically wiped out the entire population. So this was during his first ascension. We can guesstimate. And I'm going to theorize that since Ling Wen brings it up, that Xie Lian knows about the White Calamity, I'm going to bring it up that the White Calamity caused it. And the only reason that I say that is because the White Calamity has like a creepy mask. And it looks like a face, and it's called a no face. And it would seem kind of oddly appropriate that the no face creates faces on other people's faces, and it causes all this death and destruction. Seems like it would fit. Well, we'll talk about the White Calamity and Xie Lian, because there are parallels there. There are parallels with all of the ghosts and the tales. So, and then there's things about Hua Cheng's origins that are, it's all interesting. So yeah. But yeah, so the human face disease, it's highly contagious. But Xie Lian's like, well, that's definitely the human face disease. But that kid has clearly been around for hundreds of years because they say it was extinguished. So they found a way to get rid of it. Now, the scary thing is, get rid of it. Does that mean they just wiped out Shanli? They just wiped out the whole city? They're like, well, the only way we can get rid of it is if we just kill all these people. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that Xie Lian is like, yeah, my entire home, my family, my friends, everyone, all had to be exterminated to get rid of this disease, and I couldn't save them. Because his whole thing was saving the common people. So if his whole deal was like, I'm going to save all the common folk, and then he couldn't save them from the human face disease, and they ended up having to wipe out his entire city, then that's doing the opposite of what he wanted. So questions that will arise, and obviously I don't want answers. We'll figure it out as we go, right? So questions though is, did Xie Lian destroy his own city? And that led to him, because we said in like the part 1, one of the things was that he went back and was like, I'm going to go save my city. And the Heavenly Emperor was like, no, you can't do that. It's not going to work. And he's like, I'm going to go. And then things went even worse. So I'm thinking that after all that went down, he was demoted. And just, that would be the worst feeling if your city like fell into ruins and destruction and you got demoted the same day. Things were not looking up for Xie Lian, right? So did he destroy his own city? My question is how is the White Calamity connected to the Bandage Boy? And is the Bandage Boy connected to Hua Cheng? I don't think Hua Cheng and the Bandage Boy are the same, because the Bandage Boy was all about Ying, and I don't think Hua Cheng cares. Hua Cheng cares about Xie Lian, not Zhao Ying. But I wonder if the White Calamity is connected to the boy. If they're connected, because why would this boy still exist? Is he a ghost? Is he even alive? Because they've established in this, what I like the novel does is it establishes that the ghosts and humans can exist within the same realm. So it very well, the boy that they've been talking to could very well be a ghost. It could be the White Calamity. And the fact that Ling Wen's like, oh, well, he's been defeated, and even if he weren't, he wouldn't be a threat right now. So I'm like, did he like downgrade into little bandage boy and like run off into the caves? And then because the thing is, I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like if there's any calamity that is purely evil, it's the white no face. But then this story is telling us and showing us in ways that these ghosts may have more complicated pasts than we give them credit for. So maybe the White Calamity isn't as... It's either one of two things. Either the White Calamity is not as terrifying and menacing as it seems, or has a tragic backstory and is connected to the Bandage Boy, or the White Calamity is the worst thing possible. That's where my mind is. It's like either the White Calamity, there's some silver lining there, there's some backstory, we'll find out more about it later, or it's actually the final boss that we have to defeat. I don't know, but that's funny because it also seems like the Heavenly Realm would be something we're gonna talk about it. But yeah, so that's interesting. So the Bandage Boy, how old is he? Is he a ghost? Why, what did I write here? It was like, why is he so fixated with Ying? Like, why does he care about her so much? I think obviously he cares about her because she didn't judge him. She was kind of like to Hua Cheng what Xie Lian is to him. Like, to Ying is to that Bandage Boy what Xie Lian is maybe to Hua Cheng. So that could be why he's fixated on hers. But I find that interesting. But yeah, the part of the story where Xie Lian is so disturbed by what he's seeing with the human face disease. He's so shook up that he completely forgets that he's holding the corpse of a dead girl and brings her into a tea shop. And the tea guy's like, oh, no. It's like, that's how rattled he is. This is clearly, and now that we know from watching the Donghua that Xie Lian has purposefully blocked out some trauma in his past because he doesn't want to think about it, this brings up like a whole wave of stuff he'd probably have tried to forget. And so it's interesting, right, that he's doing all that. So I want to make note there for that. Also making note about the paths to heroics that Non-Fung and them talk about. They talk about how the paths to heroics, the ascension is bloody. And they talk about Pei Jr. slaughtering a city in order to ascend. Yeah, so here's kind of this is where things get interesting, is that you have this notion about the heavenly realm and the ghost realm / mortal realm. And I'm going to put ghost realm / mortal realm together for a second, because they establish the heavenly realm like overlooks and looks down on the mortal realm, versus the ghost realm and the mortal realm, which they share one plane of existence. Or at least it seems like maybe you have like the heavenly realm up here, and then the mortal realm and the ghost realm are side by side. They maybe are kind of like a Venn diagram where they kind of overlap and they are able to interact with one another. But that's interesting because what you think is that the ghost realm is below the mortal realm, like it goes heavenly, mortal, ghost. But the idea that it could be heavenly and then mortal and ghost at the same time is really cool, because it puts them on the more equal playing field. So when Hua Cheng / San Long is like telling Xie Lian, he's like, oh, you think that gods are equal to everyone? Well, then why do they exist? They put themselves on a higher plane of existence. So they don't see themselves as equal. And they don't. The gods don't see themselves as equal. They see themselves as above. And it's symbolically represented that they are above humanity, right? That they are more powerful. And which is funny because the ghosts that can be just as powerful as the gods are on the same realm as the humans. So that's one thing. That is one thing. But also you have the idea that ascension. The ascension comes from heroics. And heroics can often, I'm going to put because it's not always the case. I'm not saying Ling Wen slaughtered a country, because she didn't. May come from bloody battle. versus the ghosts, which is funny because they say that the gods are risen and the ghosts are fallen. But so far what we've seen from the ghosts, we've only seen at this point Shanji, really, but later on the Dongwon when we see Ban Yu and them, is that the ghosts really, they suffered. Like, they died and suffered horrible fates and kind of wallowed in despair. So they're created from despair and suffering and pain, which makes it kind of like, you know, it's funny because the heroic stuff is at the expense of others and their fates, but whereas the ghosts are created from like really tragic circumstances that seem like they could be maybe beyond their control in a way. And I'm not saying that the ghosts aren't responsible for becoming ghosts, but it seems like a lot of the circumstances that the ghosts that made them what they are tied to this pain and suffering that they themselves may not have been entirely in control of. Like, they were in control of part of it, but not the whole picture. Whereas when you ascend, it's like, it's all you. Like, your acts make the difference, right? So that's curious. It was also noted that Xie Lian and them, that when you ascend, like, the Heavenly Emperor can demote but cannot ascend. So the ascension process is just something that happens. Like, it just happens. You can't control it, which is why everybody's surprised when Xie Lian shows up again. So again, the second ascension is really a mystery box that I'm excited about, but then so is the third ascension, because I'm like, how did he be a scrap collector and ascend again? So, all right. But we have these 4 tales. Okay, so the 4 famous tales. Okay, before I get to that, is there anything else I'm missing? Because I feel like there's a few more notes I had on here. I just want to talk about the 4 famous tales and the ghost calamities, but we're not quite there yet, so. But okay, so the path to heroics is bloody. Pei Jr. slaughtered the city. I like that it's funny because Fu Yao doesn't trust Hua Cheng, but their viewpoints kind of seem similar. And then Non-Fong is convinced that the Heavenly Court. I had Hua Cheng on here. I talked about that too in the reaction. But so Fu Yao does not think that the Heavenly Court is full of trustworthy people. Fu Yao is very suspicious, and he's tied to Mu Qing. And that's interesting. That makes sense on Mu Qing's part, because Mu Qing was the person that was the sweeper. He was the one that kind of rose up the ranks because of Xie Lian, right? He was kind of from a lowly status. So it would make sense that he wouldn't trust people, so why would Fu Yao? Whereas Non-Fong, much like Feng Xin, seems trustworthy and believes that there are trustworthy people in the realm, which kind of ties to Feng Xin, who followed Xie Lian for a while. That all ties together pretty nicely. I like that. And then we get Feng Xin. I like Feng Xin just curses right off the bat. He's like, holy fuck, and that's like how we start off meeting him. I'm like, interesting. It almost seems like Feng Xin's attitude almost seems to align more with Fu Yao's, and Mu Qing's aligns more with Non-Fong, which makes it interesting because their subordinates are working for the opposite general. So that's curious. But so we get this idea here that we know that Feng Xin is not good with women, but the idea that Pei Ming is not at fault. I wanted to bring this up before we started the famous tales. The idea that the gods are not at fault. The ghosts are at fault. Yeah, because that whole part was interesting. I was like, okay. Because they say that Shanji's whole circumstance, they're like, they make the argument and do like this whole gaslighting scapegoat thing where they're like, oh, no. Shanji, yeah, she'd been a ghost for a long time. She'd suffered and killed herself and become a ghost for a long time. But she didn't get powerful and start harming humans until Qi Rong showed up and gave her his power and started giving her motivation and influence. So it's his fault that all this happened. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I was like, she didn't kill herself and become a ghost because of Qi Rong. She did it because of Pei Ming, because he, kind of abandoned her, and for other reasons. We've talked about it enough. But I found it interesting that they were instantly like, no, Pei Ming's not at fault. It's all Qi Rong. It's Qi Rong's business. Even though in the novel they say that everybody knows that Pei Ming is kind of at fault, but they're willing to pass the blame on to the ghosts. So I'm like, wow, they really just throw the ghosts under the bus. Like, just, it's not the god's fault, it's all the ghosts. The ghosts are evil. That's all they can be. And I'm like, interesting. Which, I'm not defending the ghosts, saying that they're all like sunshine and rainbows. Chi-Rong had a whole bloody forest full of corpses hanging from it. He seems a little, they call him in the book asinine. I was like, he seems like a big piece of work. But at the one point, it's like, okay, if you get blamed for being a monster long enough, and you're called a monster long enough, some individuals might decide, fine, you want to call me a monster? Then I'll be a monster. You know, that seems like it's, a lot of these ghosts, I'm wondering if the reputation, like just like the gods are influenced by the prayers, if the rumors influence the ghost. And it's like, okay, well, are the ghosts as bad as they seem because that's what people label them as? And they're like, fine, that's just what I am, kind of like the gods. So there's this idea of how they are labeled, of how the labels influence the individual. Like, if you're benevolent and called benevolent enough, then everybody will start believing it. If you're called a monster long enough, then you're going to be a monster. So that's interesting. But yeah, so Xie Lian, I love that Xie Lian's an old man. Xie Lian just brings up stuff. It's like, hey guys, hey, I just want to talk about stuff, and nobody's really paying attention to him. But he does bring up the child spirit. I like that it's Mu Ching that's like, what child spirit? Like, Mu Ching's like instantly like, what's going on? And nobody really has an explanation for Xie Lian. So the child spirit is still a mystery. We don't know why the child spirit was singing only to Xie Lian. I think it's tied to Hua Cheng. How it's tied to Hua Cheng, I don't know, but I feel like that's it. But Xie Lian's the only one that heard it. That's what we know. So then we finally, get back over here, get into the 4 famous tales that start on page 107. So, they're not the strongest of the gods, which again is interesting that you have your 4 famous tales, and we'll do verses over here versus the calamities. Now, the calamities are the strongest from what we know. They are the strongest of the ghosts. The 4 famous tales are not necessarily the strongest gods. They're just the most well-known. So again, I find that interesting because it's almost like the heavenly realm and all that is a facade. And it's like, oh, it's just hearsay. It's just what we tell you. But whereas the ghosts are like, no, we're really freaking strong. We came out of a volcano where we killed thousands of other ghosts. It's like, oh, okay. So it seems like there's a parallel there. But yeah, so we have the 4 ones. Xie Lian had been slow on the uptake when it came to news from the outside world. And so we have the young lord who poured. Now these are not in order they do in the Donghua. The Manhua. I'm going to do the prince who pleased God. Okay. So we have the prince who pleased God, which is our boy Xie Lian. We figure that. We have the young lord who poured wine. Okay. The young lord who poured wine. Okay. We have that one. And then we have the general who snapped his sword. Okay. The general who snapped his sword. And then we have the princess who slit her throat. Okay. But that seems so, like, it's interesting because there's some parallels within that. Like, I see, like, the prince who pleased God, Xie Lian, but then I also think of, like, Xie Lian when he was General Hua, like, he got trampled, so it's snapping a sword almost makes it seem like you don't want to fight, that you're doing some kind of peaceful resistance. So it seems like that could be it. And then the young lord who poured wine seems like it's the princess who slit her throat, because when you think of pouring wine, you pour the red wine down, you think of slitting your throat, like the red blood comes down, so they seem connected. and these are all gods. These three are gods who've already come. So I'm like, oh, is the general who snapped his sword like Pei Ming, and it's him actually lamenting Shanji's death? You know, that'd be fun. The young lord who poured wine, we don't know him yet, and then the princess who slit her throat is a goddess. Okay. So, but then we have those, and it says that the 4 calamities probably grew popular later, but he'd never heard of it before. And so if it was the word calamity, it shouldn't be anything good. So mooching is very cool about, like, you don't know what the calamities are. Like, what have you been doing all this time? And Xie Lian's like, well, I've been scrap collecting and just living my life. Thanks for asking. You know, like, just trying to live and do my thing. He's like, it's not easy being mortal. You should try it for once. So then we have the ship-sinking black water, the night-touring green lantern, the white cloth calamity, and the crimson rain sought flower. Now, there seems to be, like, maybe you could align some of these. I'm just going to align the white cloth calamity. The white cloth calamity with Xie Lian. Not only because Ling Wen has made that connection in the story, but they both wear white. And it seems like they're tied to Shanli, which is his country. So they seem to be connected. There seems to be a connection there, right? And the Manhua has a really grisly visual of him, and he looks terrifying, and he's my most feared of all the calamities. I'm like, nope, don't need him for a while. Nope. So there's that. For some reason, I think the young lord who poured wine, and the general who snapped his sword, and then the princess. Now, the princess who slit her throat reminds me of the crimson rainflower. The crimson salt rainflower. Because it's like, I don't know, it seems like water, like if you slit your throat, and it could go with the pouring wine, but I don't know. The wine, when I think of slitting throat, the blood ties with the crimson rain, which is blood. So that makes me think that maybe they're connected. Hua Cheng is connected to whoever this is. And I don't know. I'm guessing there's going to be parallels. We've got all this story to get through. So my thought is, okay, we're eventually going to get more on the white cloth calamity. It's being previewed to us. We're going to get more later. But I feel like we're going to get stories on all 4 of them unraveling. We're getting Hua Cheng now. So all these are I feel like these 8 different figures are going to have their stories unraveled for us throughout this series. There's 8 volumes, so, I mean, it would make sense, right? So then we have the young lord who poured wine and the general who snapped his sword. I would tie Qi Rong, who is the Green Lantern. Is that what the night touring Green Lantern. Okay. It's the night touring Green Lantern. And I only think that because I think of, like, you drink wine at night, like at a party, and you have Qi Rong as the night touring Green Lantern. They just seem like they go hand in hand. And there's like the young lord, and Qi Rong is the youngest of the Devastation Ghosts. So maybe those 2 are connected. Maybe they're going to parallel. And then the general who snapped his sword, there is the ship sinking black water. Okay. Ship sinking black water. And so the ship-sinking black water, they make note that the ship-sinking one is the most low-key, like, doesn't really hang out with anybody, like, is just, like, a Devastation Ghost that doesn't really care. They say it's just a water ghoul and rarely starts trouble. Don't mind. Don't mind him for now. He's not important. So they're like, he's fine. Leave him alone. He's not causing any trouble. We're just going to let him be. And I feel like a general that snapped their sword would be somebody that was done with battle, that was leaving the battlefield, and so it would kind of be low-key as well. So that's where my mind is wandering. And so then the night touring Green Lantern is that vulgar corpse hanging Green Ghost. They really hate Qi Rong. They think that Qi Rong is just the worst, even though he's clearly not the strongest because he's not even supreme. He's just there by merit because he's so vile. They're like, you get to be one of us 4, kid. I just imagine Qi Rong's not very old, and not by very old I mean, obviously, they're like hundreds of years old, but I just pictured Qi Rong as like kind of like a preteen looking character. I could be wrong. That they're just mischievous, right? Like, looks like he's San Long's age. Like, looks like he's 17, even though he's probably like 1,000 years old. And then the white cloth calamity, Xie Lian is not happy about that. The first country that the white no-face destroyed was Shanli. But they say that the white face is defeated. So even if they're like, well, he's been defeated. And even if he exists somewhere in the world, he's the last person you would expect to steal the limelight. I'm like, that does not bode well. That's just, ugh. And then they go on to talk about Hua Cheng and go on from there. So it's interesting. They talk about when gods ascend, ghosts fall. And they talk about the Heavenly Watch and where that's all situated at. And so then the Black Water, they talk about all that. So it's funny that they debate on where Hua Cheng, like what he looks like. They kind of argue about what he really looks like. So Hua Cheng is either, what are they saying here? The rumors was, so let me put Hua Cheng over here, that we have the idea that some say he's a twisted boy with mood swings, which seems fair because as we've seen with San Long, he does seem to have mood swings where he goes from being perfectly happy in the Donghua to like killing snakes. So checks out. He's sometimes a gentle and elegant, handsome young man. So gentle, elegant, handsome, young man, which we could argue is San Long, so that makes sense. Sometimes a gorgeous seductress with a vicious, deceptive heart. Anything goes. So a gorgeous seductress. I like they say seductress. I'm thinking of when he showed up at the sedan to woo Xie Lian out of it to be the bridegroom. That's what I think of, so there's that. But in any case, he was dressed in red, appeared in a bloodbath with silver butterflies. Now, the backstory. Okay, so I'm going to, again, have images from the Manhua that I think, reading this section, that they're all true. I think all the backstories are combined because Xie Lian has ascended 3 times. He's got 3. Xie Lian has 3 stories. So you have Xie Lian, who is the martial god, the misfortune. We'll talk about the god of misfortune. The god of misfortune. And then the trash god, the rubbish god as they call him. So we have these 3 states that he is in, right? And then for Hua Cheng, they talk about the different origins of him, saying that when it comes to the backstory, there's different versions. Some say that he was crippled with no eye and ridiculed. Okay. And some say that he was a young soldier who died in a lost battle for his country. So he was a soldier who died in battle for his country. And then some say that he was a fool who was, and then came later to walk the earth in resentment. And some say he was a fool who was tormented by the death of his love. Some even say he was a monster. So he was a tortured soul by the death of his love. And then the outrageous claim that they say only supposedly is that Hua Cheng became a god and then purposefully became a ghost. I'm going to say that's it. I'm going to say it's all of the above. Because just like how Xie Lian's had multiple lives, who is to say that this wasn't a kid? Who's to say Hua Cheng wasn't a kid that was crippled and ridiculed? And then he met Xie Lian as he ascended as a martial god, met him on the bridge when he was saved, and Xie Lian's like, well, just live for me. That would tie to Xie Lian, to the whole White Calamity showing up, would tie to that. And then he became a soldier maybe to fight against whatever was happening with White Calamity. And then maybe around the time that Xie Lian fell, he was a soldier, and there was that. And then as far as like tortured by the death of his love, if Xie Lian was demoted again, maybe he thought Xie Lian was dead. Maybe he worried about it. I don't know, but I just feel like all of those are above. And the idea that Hua Cheng did become a god, he did ascend, and then he was like, screw you guys are the worst. I would not be surprised by that at all. But that's funny because while they're speculating, like, what if Hua Cheng was a god that became a ghost, the same thing happens with Xie Lian with the whole misfortune ghost thing, is that he was like, they're talking about, the misfortune ghost when he reads the scrolls. They're like, yeah, the misfortune ghost, it brings bad luck and curses upon anybody that it meets. And he's like, well, that sounds more like a ghost than a god. And I'm like, ah! So a god that became a ghost. And I'm not saying that Xie Lian is a ghost. No. But I find it funny that Xie Lian and Hua Cheng both have similar circumstances surrounding them that they could be considered either one. It's just kind of crazy. So that's so interesting to me. And I feel like this one chapter, that chapter 12 and 13 are setting up like the entire story for you, being like, oh, you'll figure it out eventually, but here's like the foundation and you don't know what it means yet, but you're going to figure it out at some point. And it's like, it's like, really? Okay. All right. So yeah, so we have all of that established. So then we have also the two ghost kings. So they only tell us one. They say that in the city of Gu, or however you pronounce it, I'm going to say the city of Gu, it's like a giant volcano, and you battle tens of thousands of ghosts, and then one emerges victorious. Why not? And so we know that Hua Cheng is one of them. And I think that Hua Cheng, like, because this is a romance deep down inside, that Hua Cheng was like, he's fought all this time for Xie Lian. Like, he's fought for Xie Lian to be with him, and that's like been his motivation. His reason for living is Xie Lian. And that's what's given him all this inner strength. And it's like, if that's going to be the case, I'm here for it. But I feel like that's what got him. And he tells Xie Lian he wasn't a nice person when he was alive. He says that when he was alive. So he could be this twisted boy that was not nice. But the only thing that kind of tethers him to this world and has any remote sense of kindness is Xie Lian, the person that he loves. So yeah. I like the concept of just because you're evil or just because you are, a villain doesn't mean you're not worthy of loving, or you're not capable of loving something. So I like the concept that this story presents, that these ghosts, even though they're considered evil and they do heinous things, they still have the capacity to love and do love things. And it's just whether or not all that comes back in return. So now there's other questions, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so the two ghost kings came from the city of Gu. One was Hua Cheng. They don't tell us the other. I'm going to say that it's the White Calamity. And not because I'm like on the White Calamity bandwagon, because I am, because that's the most interesting of the calamities to me so far. But I think because it wasn't Qirong, because Qirong's the youngest and not a supreme, so it's not him. I don't think it's the ship sailing Blackwater. It just doesn't seem, I don't know. I feel like the ship sailing Blackwater calamity is too chill to have came from a volcano of 10,000 corpses and ghosts that it fought. I figure if you get out of a mess like that, you're probably in a bad mood, or you're probably like all fired up, and the Blackwater seems too chill for that. Whereas the White Cloth Calamity seems really spooky and mysterious and powerful, and would be, if it's giving Xie Lian a threat and we've established Xie Lian's really strong, then I'm going to guess it's the White Cloth and the Crimson Rain. And I'm going to guess that will put the Crimson Rain Salt Flower, which is Hua Cheng, in direct opposition of the White Cloth Calamity, because it's the most direct opponent of the ghosts of Xie Lian. Could be wrong. Just throwing out every possible theory I could have. So yeah, so we get all that established. And then we have the trial where Hua Cheng faced the 35 gods. He challenged 35, and the two that said no were the subordinates of Xie Lian. Were Fang Shen and Mu Qing. They were the only two that didn't face him. And they make a point of saying in this, like, several times, that it was because it wasn't worth their time. They're like, oh, we don't want to fight him. But I'm like, did they know back then that did they know that Hua Cheng liked Xie Lian? I don't think that's the case. It's just really kind of coincidental that the two that didn't fight him, that kept their ascension and were able to get generals deputy generals later on that are helping Xie Lian now are the two that were his former subordinates. So I'm like, is there more to the story that's not being told? Did Mu Qing and Feng Xin speculate whether or not Hua Cheng might have liked Xie Lian? It's just awfully coincidental. But yeah, so what's interesting about this is that the 33 that fought him made a promise. There was a bargain. So either if they lost, they would become mortal, and if Hua Cheng lost, he would give up his ashes. So essentially, which is kind of a big gamble for Hua Cheng, because yeah, the 33 gods could become mortal, but they could just ascend again at some point, right? If Hua Cheng loses, his entire soul is destroyed. They established in this that if the ashes are destroyed, the whole ghost is gone. There's just nothing left. You're erased from existence if you're gone. So it's like they were clearly in the clear. They had the better wager, right? Hua Cheng's like, I will be erased into oblivion if I lose. You guys will just become mortal until, I don't know, you do something to ascend again. But they don't keep their promise. But they don't. That part got me, that they didn't uphold the promise. Which is funny, because if you think of how genuine San Long was to Xie Lian, telling him, like, no, if I give up my ashes, I'm giving them up. That's all there is to it. I don't care what happens. It's like, okay. Whereas the gods, they didn't uphold their promise. I love how they phrase it in the novel. They're like, oh, well, in another 50 years, everybody will forget about this. We'll just brush it under the rug. It was just something that happened. It's fine. We're going to treat it like it's nothing. We'll just ignore Hua Cheng and act like it never happened. And then, so instead, he started destroying all the temples. Now, how he burned 10,000 temples in a night, but then again, he was able to destroy all the soldiers in the Banyu pit in like 10 seconds. So he's just that strong. The power of love is that deep, I guess. Okay. But I love that he even twisted what they were trying to do, that the gods tried to get into the dreams of royals, to have them like stamp out Hua Cheng. I'm like, that's pretty dirty to like go into your worshippers' dreams. And Hua Cheng was like, nah. And instead they worshipped him instead, and it just erased the gods from their position. It's great. And then the whole time that this entire like terrifying story about Hua Cheng is being told, and they're like, everybody's quaking in their boots, Xie Lian's like, those butterflies are really cute. It's like, so yeah. So that chapter's amazing. I love it. Xie Lian, I feel so bad for him, because he like tries to make friends. Like in chapter 14, he tries to make friends with the other gods, and nobody really cares. Nobody cares. They all just give up. And so I felt really sad about this, because Xie Lian, like, he tries to make friends, he fails, so he gives up and moves on. And that's just what he does. And it's so sad, because you realize that Xie Lian has probably had to do this quite a bit, and he's dealt with so much failure in his life that he's just decided, like, whatever, I'll just move on and just keep doing my thing. It's really sad. But yeah, so this whole thing about him being a god of misfortune, it's hard to tell if it was being a god or a ghost described. I don't know. I feel like the White Cloth Calamity and Xie Lian are connected, but I don't know. Like, are the ghosts like shades of the gods? Like, I don't know. Lots of theories. Lots of theories. So then we go back to the whole thing with Xie Lian collecting his scraps, doing what he does. He explains how eating works, and he gets on the cart, and that's where he meets San Long. Okay. And that's where he meets him. And so they start talking about the Water Master, and just like how the gods have nicknames, the ghosts give them nicknames too that aren't so kind. So they call him the Water Tyrant, and talk about how the Water Master has become this god of wealth. But the way that San Long describes the Water Tyrant, saying, well, it's because if you don't offer anything up, you don't get a safe passage across. So you could tell San Long finds that a little unfair because he's like, what if somebody's trying to pass and they can't pay for it? You're just going to destroy them. You can see where he's got this, San Long has this very interesting sense of justice about him. And it's like justice because he kind of chides Xie Lian for thinking that everyone's equal. He's like, well, that's kind of like, you know, a pipe dream. And so he seems very like cynical about it. So he has a very cynical sense of justice, which is interesting. And so from there, we go back into everything. Now, I will say, the Manhua, the executed criminals, the Donghua just showed these spirited away looking ghosts. No, they're headless, and they're just holding their heads, and you can see like the inside of their necks in the Manhua, and it's gross and grisly. It's a lot more graphic, as one would expect. But yeah, so that part was interesting, and we had the idea that July 15th was the Zhanyan Festival, which was the ghost realm intersecting with the mortal realm, and ghosts were going amok. But there's this thing where in the Donghua, it's kind of shown that whenever San Long gets touched by Xie Lian, he just has this visceral, like, just grimace, like he doesn't like it. In the novel, he like takes his hand away like it's getting burned. Like he doesn't want to touch Xie Lian. And I'm like, why? Why don't you want to touch his hand? You held out your hand to have him come off the sedan, so why don't you want to touch him now? Like, what's holding you back? It's like, But we also have the idea that Xie Lian is very unlucky versus San Long, who is extremely lucky. But that idea is kind of funny because San Long is the ghost who is supposed to be the bad guy, and he's the lucky one, and Xie Lian is the god that's supposed to be the good guy and is the unlucky one. So, like, San Long's considered lucky despite being a ghost, and Xie Lian is unlucky despite being a god, and those seem like they're in conflict with one another. But San Long, Hua Cheng, and Xie Lian make this like little yin and yang balance that I love in this series so far, and so yeah. But yeah. And then we find out that he has 2 cursed shackles. It's not, I thought from the Donghua that Xie Lian had cursed shackles on both his ankles, but it's just the right one and his neck. So I'm wondering if the neck is from the first ascension where he got that, and then after the second ascension they put another shackle on him to like. So it would make sense if Xie Lian only had the first shackle when he went back the second time to face the Heavenly Emperor, and the second time when he lost, the Heavenly Emperor was like, no, we're going to put another one on you to reduce your power even more. And it's like, okay. That's my thought anyway. I could be wrong. But yeah, so they managed to, I feel like they get visitors due to San Long's good luck, and that's what gets all the people there. But yeah, so these chapters were really, really good. And I've already talked for 45 minutes just on them. But, I mean, for the most part, the rest of the novel, like chapters 14 through 17, chapters 14 through 16 cover pretty much the same thing that the Donghua does. I do love the chibi expressions on Xie Lian. Like, Xie Lian has some really cute chibi expressions in the Manhua, especially with him and San Long. They have, like, these cute... Like, San Long always looks like... San Long is gorgeous in the Manhua, for the record. I was like, oh, what a dashing young rogue. And he looks really great. And so they draw him, like, even as a chibi, he, like, is very determined and proud. And the cool thing about this is that if you read the novel and had not watched the Donghua, I think it would be harder to tell that San Long is Hua Cheng at this point. I really think it would be harder to tell. I mean, if you read the Manhua, you'd be like, oh no, you know. You know instantly. But I feel like reading the novel, there is an air of mystery there where this kid knows a lot. He's given, you know, he knows a lot, but like the ghosts getting scared, you don't see the reveal that it's Hua Cheng scaring them away. You think that Xie Lian, and then Xie Lian looks behind and it's just Hua Cheng there, and you're like, maybe it was me. Why were they scared? I don't know. But there's more mystery there, and there's more mystery, and it just makes you kind of question whether it is San Long that's Hua Cheng, but you're not for certain yet. So there's little things once they get to the house that seems like it's connected, but there's still, like, I could see somebody being like, I don't know for sure. And then, you know, by the time we get to Banyu, it's pretty obvious. But when he blows up a snake, that's when you know for sure. That was my sign. I was like, nope, there's no question now. He's definitely Hua Cheng. He blew that snake up to bits. Definitely him. But yeah, really good chapters. The Manhua with them inside the hut and everything, and the novel inside the hut. It was so good. I was really in love with it. But like this business is my jam, because I feel like this is the setup for the rest of the series. We just have to go through it now. We have to meet all the calamities. I can't wait to meet Qirong. I'm all about a trash king. I'm so ready. The Blackwater one seems like the one I'm least excited for, because I'm like, eh. The White Calamity, I'm like, stay away right now. Nope. The Princess Who Slit Her Throat is interesting. I'm super curious about her. The General Who Snapped a Sword, I'm going to say it's Pei Ming, but I don't know. I could be wrong. The Young Lord Who Poured the Wine. These two are mysterious to me. I'm super excited about Qirong. The Ship Sailing Blackwater, I'm like, I feel like, okay, if you're looking at a story, you want to save your best for last, right? You want to save your real heavy hitters for the end, like towards the climax. I could see them introducing Qirong like at the midway point, because he's like got enough mystery and stuff built. They're either going to do Qirong like in season 2. Here's my thing. I think that they're either for season 2, if we're going to face a calamity, if we're going to see a calamity, we saw our first calamity we see in season 1, which is Hua Cheng. I feel like Qirong is going to be the next one that we meet. It's either Qirong or the Ship Sailing Blackwater. I feel like one of those two is going to be the next one that we meet in the second season. Only because, I don't know. Only because the Ship Sailing Blackwater seems like kind of not boring, but seems like the more low-key one. So maybe that's the one that we go to build up to Qirong. But we've talked about Qirong enough that it seems like maybe we'll meet him first. But then they could be building up to Qirong. And then I still think the White Cloth Calamity is going to be the last one that we meet, because it's tied directly to Xie Lian and his past. It's probably tied to the Second Ascension that we don't know about. I feel like that's going to be saved for last, but I don't know. My mind is going crazy with all of these ideas, and the ideas of how the Heavenly Realm and the Ghost Realm are similar and different, and just the kind of contradictions of what we expect from each realm to what we get. And my mind is like overloaded. It's just an overload of things, but it's so good. So yeah, okay. Just a lot to talk about. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what we're going to get into with these next chapters. But we're about to start Banyu. So we didn't quite make it to the Banyu arc starting. That's going to be next time. But I didn't want to go further than these chapters because I knew we were going to have a lot of stuff. And it was going to be a lot to take in. But I'm very curious to know your thoughts. Again, please no spoilers. Please no plot spoilers. If I'm right, if I'm wrong, I don't want to know. I'm going to wallow in misery until I find out. But no, I'm not going to be miserable. I'm actually really excited because this has set up a foundation, and now it's going to be following and watching everything fall into place, which to me is really exciting because we've got things set up, and now it's going to be like, okay, well, what order are we going in? We're going to obviously touch on these 8 figures. They're probably important to the whole story. They may be all interconnected. What are we going to do with that? How do they tie to the Ghost Realm versus the Heavenly Realm? Was Hua Cheng a god? I imagine that Hua Cheng ascended because they talked about he got all this praise from people worshiping him. I imagine that he did ascend, and then he was like, you all are full of shit. Nope, bye. And then pieced out to the Ghost Realm. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But I just feel like Xie Lian and Hua Cheng balance each other out. And that they're the balance between the two worlds. that the rest of the world doesn't, the Heavenly Realm doesn't want there to be such a balance. It's like, but yeah. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. What you guys thought of these chapters. I feel like I still have so much to talk about them, but I don't know what else to say that hasn't been said in the Donghua or hasn't been said in the comments before. So I'll be very curious to know your thoughts down below in the comment section, what you all thought about this and about all this history and lore. There's so many theories, but my mind is like going a mile a minute. And so I'm excited to see what all we get broken down as we go further into the story. So yeah, next week we're going to do, we're going to look at Manhua. We ended Manhua. It was chapters 13 through 20 were the stills that you guys saw up there. The Manhua is gorgeous, by the way. I don't have much to say other than I really liked the pictures of the calamities, the pictures of the 4 tails. The look on Xie Lian's face when he sees the painting that Sanlong made of him as the crown prince, it's perfect. Sanlong looks gorgeous. I could praise the Manhua because it's beautiful. But yeah. So there's all that to look forward to. But next week we'll start looking at part 4, which will be chapters 17 through 23. So a big old chunk there. We're getting into Banyu. It's going to be part 7 and 8 of the English translation. I'm pretty excited. We're just chugging right along. We're already at the halfway point of volume 1. We're going to chug right into volume 2, baby. I'm excited. I'm all in now. I'm like, yes, nope, we need to get into it. Which my videos will probably be a lot longer once we get into volume 2, because I'm realizing that a lot of times when I'm reading, I'm like, okay, well, I know exactly what's happening here. I'm still reading it, but I'm like, I know. And I feel like when I get into uncharted waters, I'm going to need to take a lot more time to read, because it's going to be brand new stuff that I've not seen the Donghua for, so I don't have a visualization of it. Like when I read, like reading these chapters, I could see when they were in the forest, when they were getting chased by the ghosts, like I could see all that and visualize it and be like, okay, I know what's happening. But I know when we get to volume 2, it's going to be like, okay, I don't know what's happening, so I'm going to need to like take my time and take a lot more time reading it. So the chapters when we get to that volume may be a bit more spread out. They're a little more condensed here for volume 1, so we'll see. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I hope you like this reaction discussion. I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below, but I'll be back next week with more of Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye.